Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of LifeSight AI, the podcast series. And in this episode, we are really excited to be joined by the guys from Paris, guys from Gleamer. And I know a lot of you will know Gleamer as a medical imaging company, started based in Paris around radiology. And we're joined by Albane Grandjean. And she is the commercial side of the business. I think in the commercial and the regulatory side of the business, formerly of GE. So she's going to come on and she's going to tell all about Gleamer and the story of what they're doing and looking forward to doing in the coming years. But thank you very much for coming on. Really appreciate it. Welcome.
Thanks a lot.
You've had quite a, well, you've not been in startups long, right? That's like the interesting thing here. So give the listeners and people watching as well on video a little bit about yourself and how you arrived at being in a medical imaging startup in Paris.
Sure. So I'm an engineer, that's my academic background. I never really had, pure engineering roles, but I started as a clinical and technical expert in CT scans, already in medical imaging with GE. That's really where I started my career. And it's true that, going into a huge multinational company, I had the ability to move pretty much every 2-3 years to different roles, because you have that path available in huge companies. So I was able to take on marketing, commercial, sales transformation, consulting responsibilities throughout Europe, Russia, and North Africa. And that really, allowed me to build my experience. But at some point I felt that, I was a little bit constrained. So I wanted, to try a different type of environment and a fast-paced startup company to understand, what it's like to build something pretty much from scratch. So I joined Gleamer at an interesting time, because they had just closed a new fundraising round after their Series A. So they were really in that, expansion phase from being a very, early startup. Just to give you some numbers, I joined early 2021, and we were, I think, 18 people in the company.
Yeah.
Right now we're 45, so pretty much a year later. So it gives you an idea of, pace that we follow. And again, to give you an idea on the more, commercial side, we had our solutions deployed in France, basically, which is of course our historical markets. And we are now in 14 countries. So we have, commercially opened 14 countries, including the US, because by March this year, we had our first FDA clearance. From a medical device perspective, that's quite an achievement.
Yeah.
In 1 year, I saw really, an entire business being built. We internationalized the company. We expanded our roles across all these different countries. So it's been quite exciting, and that's what I was really looking for. To really build something from scratch and have that level of freedom and autonomy to make your own decisions, and don't have any safety nets. So you really measure your direct impacts and your mistakes.
Yeah, hopefully not too many mistakes. But Gleamer itself, you have quite a big aim, right? To be like, not like a clinically focused in one area medical imaging. It's all around radiology. So you've got your first product, BoneView, right? For looking at fractures. Tell us a little bit about that product and the impacts it's making right now on the market.
Yeah. So that's interesting. BoneView was created really based on the observation that, so of course, radiologist resources are scarce. We all know the tension on healthcare systems, on medical resources, but also on time and productivity issues. So BoneView was really designed to answer, I would say, 2 questions. One is the number of diagnostic errors that still happen in the emergency rooms, and fracture represents up to 80% of these, so it's really massive. And to answer as well the productivity issue in reading that huge amount of X-rays that are produced by hospitals and imaging centers. So the system detects fractures and really, scans through X-ray images and points out fractures to the doctors, so they can confirm the diagnosis and be much quicker in interpreting the images. And it's funny because no one was specifically asking for a tool like this. So it's really by observing carefully radiologist workflow and being really surrounded by radiologists that we came up with that idea. And actually now people are completely addicted to it, because it's, it's relieving them from one of the most tedious tasks, which is, screening pixel by pixel an image and multiple images and piles of x-rays throughout the day. So it's really acting as a safety net for them, and securing diagnosis and speeding up their interpretations. So now we, whenever we need to, stop the service for whatever reason, people are coming crying for us to put the service back on because they cannot live without it anymore, which is scary, but it's great because it means we've really built something that's very mainstream, that's answering everybody's issue, and that basically is very sticky, meaning that our customers are going to, keep subscribing because they really cannot live without it anymore.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I guess when people talk about having a solution in either AI or software or a data solution within medtech, sometimes there isn't a problem. They've got a solution, but they're trying to find a problem to fit that solution. And that's why some companies or some researchers aren't successful, because they can't find the problem for their solution to solve. So how did Gleamer go about divvying up or deciding which problem the solution that they had could solve? Or was it they find the problem first and then figured out the solution?
So I guess it's a little bit in between, but it's again really by observing radiologist workflow. So the founders, so one of the founder is an MSK radiologist, so I guess that gives a solution by itself. And the two others, so our CEO is a serial entrepreneur in healthcare specifically. It's is his third company in healthcare, so he has really that deep understanding of doctors' workflow and physicians' workflow, and that culture in observing patient pathways to understand what are the challenges. So that's how basically they came up with the idea that they needed to come up with a solution that removes the most tedious tasks and the most repetitive tasks, really the ones that are annoying to every radiologist. And by that, you come very quickly in the field of X-ray, because that represents a huge volume of imaging procedures. And no one's really interested in X-ray anymore. Radiologists are much more excited by CT, MR, or other 3D imaging techniques, because of course they bring a much larger variety of information and complex situations.
Yeah, I see. Okay, and so devising the solution then, how did Gleamer go about it? What was first, did I think?
So for sure it requires multiple, combination of a lot of skills and people. I guess first was the R&D on AI models. So really the question was, so now that we know we want to solve the issue of, fracture diagnosis, they had that idea with AI because the third co-founder is an AI engineer, so no surprise. But they needed to find the models, and just like many AI companies, the source models are coming from open source algorithms that are pretty much on the shelf, but that are adapted to completely different problems. Most of them are coming from the autonomous car problematic, right? So detecting with cameras, detecting people on the street, detecting a truck, knowing when to stop, things like this. So here, the first thing is to adapt these models into the question that we wanted to be answered. And here for us, it's detecting very, very subtle findings in huge images, because in medical imaging, the size and resolution of images is multiplied by hundreds compared to camera images, for example. So that's a lot of R&D work in order to adapt to the question you want answered, and to do experiments and to develop a framework to automatize these experiments and make them efficient, because otherwise you can spend a lifetime in developing and adapting AI models, actually.
Yeah. So when was there the point of traction? When did they, not the eureka moment, but like when was that in the history of Gleamer, when someone got picked up, or it happened to, get commercial traction, or was in place and stuff?
Well, there are actually a few milestones you need to reach to get there, even to get traction. So then, you need to demonstrate performances. You need to clear your algorithm, from a regulatory perspective. So again, a lot of skill sets to bring around the table, and you get traction once you have a solution that really performs extremely well for the whole variety of clinical situations that physicians can encounter. So that means that on our side, we had to go through multiple rounds of training of that algorithm to make sure that it applies and it generalizes across different manufacturers, different practices, different image qualities, different clinical situations, and to make it, applicable and relevant in the most, the largest number of studies. So we had traction pretty much right after our CE marking. Once we were able to have an algorithm that is so cleared and commercializable, that had passed performance testing, and one very important step in medical devices that had one first publication in a high impact factor journal. And we put a lot of effort on clinical validation studies to drive that adoption, because we need to drive trust, and that's one of the major issues with AI. People are still a bit skeptical about it and about using it and its benefits. So it's really about showing on trials the type of performance improvement that you can get using AI, and that's a major milestone that drove a lot of adoption once we had that paper released in radiology, which is the highest level of journal in our field.
Yeah, I want to touch on like trust in AI and uptake in AI in a second, but delving into startup versus big corporation. There'll be people listening to this who are just startup people and have never worked in like a GE or a Siemens or a Philips. And there are some people that are maybe thinking about the transition or are looking at Gleamer potentially as well, who are coming from bigger businesses. What would you say the biggest differences are on a positive way as well?
Well, probably I'll touch on both, So, on the positive side, for sure, it's freedom, autonomy, and the ability to do various and multiple things at once, because there's no, let's say, job description that we can stick on as in large companies, meaning that you enter in a marketing role, you're gonna right away have almost a 360-degree marketing role, instead of being on digital marketing only, on being on, I don't know, communication or on marketing, So the roles we have are much broader than what you can find, and that are, really segmented in big companies. So it's very exciting. It can be overwhelming also, because you also need to make decisions and prioritize much more than what I could feel in larger companies, where you have some projects. These are pretty much, scoped for what you can do in your job description, and you can deliver on those. So definitely on the plus side is that, transverse approach and that autonomy, but also, the need to prioritize, because you could go anywhere and there's so much to do that usually you could get 10 people to do and to work on your topics. So that's definitely what's really exciting, and I think really enriching from a career perspective. And then coming out of these experiences, you can really value and demonstrate your ability to adapt, to understand challenges, focus your attention to what's going to matter most. And for sure, in larger companies, it's maybe more security, but I would say in larger companies, you have also the drawback in having to manage a lot of stakeholders and to understand, how to navigate in complex, and GE is one, matrix organizations.
Yeah.
Things are simpler in startups, so communication streams are simpler, but they're also completely disorganized. So, so it can feel a little bit like chaos, and that's also your internal discipline into putting all these streams or all these processes a little bit together, and start building up bricks of something that's going to scale at a later point.
Okay. And how do you think your experience at GE has allowed you to be successful at Gleamer?
There's multiple things. I mean, definitely, I mean, I had several roles in medical imaging, in the medical imaging space already. So I have definitely, you know, some recognition in terms of expertise. I've been, with GE, I was lucky enough to have, you know, very international roles. So marketing and commercial responsibilities across Europe, Russia, North Africa, and to work a lot, of course, in the US. So it gives me a very broad understanding of the markets, of customer profiles, of, you know, entry barriers in the different countries and things like this. So that's definitely something that helps me in my daily life. I guess, going into various experiences also helps me, you know, navigate through that, you know, multiplicity of projects and topics that I'm now navigating into. And I think that's what allowed me to really expand a lot my scope here at Gleamer. So I got on board early 2021 to start the marketing function and to start the clinical affairs function. So both verticals of the companies were not existing before I got there, which is great because you really get to, you know, build teams from scratch and give, you know, a direction to where we want to go. And now I have expanded my scope to product and to the US business side of the company. So again, that's really giving me a 360 understanding of the company, of the challenges, and now the ability to support our CEO into the next fundraising rounds and into really driving the next 5 year of the company.
Oh, awesome. I think I was going to say, it seems like because you had so many different roles at GE, you weren't sort of in one business unit or, you know, one team for so long. You kind of had almost that parachute mentality, coming in, making an impact, getting some great experience, and then moving and developing in that way. So you kind of got like the chaos almost as best you could in GE, but so now you're used to it, right? Which is awesome. And it's I think your prime example of somebody who's gone into a startup and you know, grasped the opportunity with both hands and has really progressed through. And it's awesome to see the impact that you're now having in the company, going next funding rounds and looking at the American expansion and such. It's just fantastic. So a great advocate for people making the jump.
Honestly, I could only advise people to do that. It's so much fun and so much learnings. And I think it keeps really that pace and make sure that you don't, you know, get bored or find, you know, new challenges. And that's, you know, the beauty. So at GE, I felt that I had to change roles every 2-3 years to, you know, not get bored. In a startup company, it's a little bit different because, again, I mean, the role that I'm still pretty much in the same functions, but the job that I had a year ago has nothing to do with what I'm doing today. So I'm hoping that I won't get, you know, that same feeling and look into a next opportunity in a year or so.
No, they definitely, and like I say, it's a great advocate for what a successful jump looks like. But just going back to the product and back to what you guys are looking to do in the future. So you're not just obviously going to stay in around sort of fractures. What is the next sort of product? If you can mention it, I don't know how much you can say, but what sort of areas are you looking at?
We've already expanded actually our catalog. So I mean, for sure, we built our credibility in MSK imaging, so in musculoskeletal, and in the field of, you know, trauma X-ray. And it's great because we're really being recognized as a major actor in that space, and we've really built a strong expertise and a deep expertise. We've already, I mean, but we don't want to be, you know, labeled with a clinical subspecialty because we feel that AI has something to bring in that same, you know, lesion detection paradigm to multiple subspecialties. So we have already expanded BoneView to other types of findings, including bone lesions, which have nothing to do with trauma X-ray, but are answering a more you know, cancer follow-up approach. And we've released earlier this year a chest X-ray product, so completely different clinical space. still in the field of X-ray. So we're, of course, leveraging our know-how. But again, we had to hire thoracic imaging experts. And that's really our philosophy. So each and every of our products has a medical expert attached to it for the entire product development cycle. So that medical expert is really the owner of the scope, the clinical scope, the outcomes, and the lifetime of the product. So we have now a thoracic imaging experts in the team. And I think that's also one thing that changed a lot from what I knew at GE. We are employing radiologists really on our day-to-day basis, and they are working with us in the same office. They're really included in our teams, so that gives us really that understanding, very deep understanding of how they work and how we want our products to be designed.
Oh, that's fascinating. I wasn't obviously. People have like advisors and such for what would work, what doesn't work, and such. But normally that was also the clinical and the medical piece would normally come from a founder of some sort as well, because normally it's a doctor who's found a problem internally and then gone, right, let's get some smart people together and do something with AI. So with those medical experts, then are they like product owners, or are they the medical expert for this? How do they sit? So they sit they're all the way through the development process, but is it like all like complete cradle to grave? Are they sitting with the software engineers one day and sitting with the AI engineers another, and then going out to some like product management stuff as well? Like,
yeah, so I mean, we work in squads, and each product is represented by a squad, and in that squad you have that medical expert that is really focusing on making sure the product is relevant and really answering the need that we've identified, and he's really participates in the squad meeting, meaning that in that squad you're going to have an AI engineer, data managers, software development engineers, and of course support from different functions like quality and regulatory. But so really, I mean, he is involved in the very early phase of product design, all the way to making sure that all the iterations in development are going fine, and that we're meeting the performance criteria that we identified with him earlier on, and that of course the product is bringing satisfaction to our customers on the market. So he stays and he's employed by the company through, I mean, all that time. And he's, of course, working with marketing to train the sales team in the medical language, and that's particular clinical subspecialty, so they can be fluent in discussing it with doctors. They train the customer success. They will get involved to ramp up our data management team to make sure that we can manipulate the particular type of data that is required for that clinical indication. So they're really involved in everything, and they bring, I think, and that's kind of uniqueness. And basically what we did is replicate what really worked well with BoneView, because we had, our co-founder was an MSK radiologist, but we replicated that model for all the other products. So each and every product or even sub-product has a medical expert attached to it.
Right, awesome. And do you think that gives credibility? So does that medical expert help gain trust in the use of AI in that clinical area?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think even before that, it brings a lot of motivation for the teams, because they can discuss with this guy all the time through the different product phases, and they can really understand what it means, what it's going to do, and what are the outcomes that we're going to drive with it. So I think first it really drives motivation for all of us actually to be working day-to-day life with doctors who are part-time for Gleamer and part-time in their institutions, in most of the time piloting the solution in its earlier stages. So that's very exciting, and I think they drive definitely the trust, because we can display that these products have been designed directly with the end users, and they help us drive, and design as well the clinical validation studies. So they will let us know what type of evidence we need to generate to make sure that their peers will adopt the solution faster than just, giving it away and have it tried on,
Yeah, it's almost like the gatekeeper come poacher type, right? And having that person, that stakeholder champion advocate on side early on. That's such a, I guess, an innovative way of looking at it. I don't know too many people that are, partnering per subsect of product. Like there will be good, obviously, partner with the same clinical area, but to have one per product per subsect is really fascinating. Where do you see the trust of AI now, though? Because we were chatting just before offline about it. So we did one in series 1 with Idence, with their chief business officer, Urian. And we discussed like the uptake and how you create a business case and what's important for AI. So kind of be good to have an idea of how you see it now, as it stands in summer of 2022, where we are with the uptake and trust of AI in healthcare.
I think, well, I'll probably speak mostly about radiology, but I think definitely we've passed that, awareness phase that we were at, pretty much when we started in 2020. We had to convince people that AI was not dangerous, that it was not going to replace radiologists and doctors, and that it was safe for patient, that it was generalizable to different situations and so on. I think we're almost, we're finishing this phase and more into, and now we see, companies are popping up pretty much every day with AI solutions in the space. And we're more now into advocating for the right AI solution to answer a specific problem and the return on investment. And so we're really today challenged on how do we justify the cost of our solution, because we don't have reimbursements, but how institutions, hospitals will pay for the solution. And I think that shows that we're kind of past that, initial phase of, skepticism, if I can call it that. And we're really now into, people are looking into, really down to earth ways to pay for it and implement it in clinical practice. That, I think that's true for very mainstream indications such as fracture detection, which I really feel is now a use case that is commonly adopted. It's commonly known that AI can be better than humans in detecting fractures. It's probably not the case for all indications. Yeah. But I think, that's where we're at with a software like BoneView. So there's no need for us anymore to educate the market on why they need that type of tool. We need to help them justify that cost and justify to invest and implement that solution. And that's I think pretty much the challenges we're looking at for the next couple of years.
So we're at that sort of reimbursement phase then across. Okay, how do you see us achieving I guess the next step and overcoming those challenges and convincing that there is an investment to come back from investing in the initial cost?
Well, we're probably but it really depends on healthcare systems, but it may be difficult, at least in our space, to go at least for each and every solution to a reimbursement. However, if we can demonstrate almost an immediate ROI for healthcare institutions, like in fracture, it flies pretty well that by using our software, they do fewer mistakes. So they will basically detect fractures earlier on. They will do additional CTs and MRs, and basically they will generate enough revenue to cover for the solution itself. And we can show that in multiple ways. We reduce the number of litigations based for missed fractures. We reduce reading time for radiologists so they can spend that time reading other high revenue cases. So we are able now to have equations and apply that to each and every customer and show how they're going to pay for that solution. We still need probably more grounded evidence with prospective trials, with very large-scale studies in order to convince payers like insurance companies and public healthcare systems in order to go really to the next level. That's going to take some time, so we cannot base our full business model on that for sure. And it's very risky and unexpected in timing. But I think the key I think we're looking at is demonstrating that ROI for each and every solution that we're going to develop, to make sure that it's easy for healthcare institutions to pay for our solutions. And that's how I think we're going to scale quickly and quicker than, waiting for a reimbursement scheme.
No, for sure. I think when I was getting some analysis last year on the market, I think Q3 last year was one of the biggest in terms of investment into European medtech and digital health companies. Like it's in terms of like quarterly. I think it was bigger than most of 2020 combined for obvious reasons. But are you, because now you're looking at, supporting in the fundraisers for Gleamer, are investors and VCs, are they more more happy, I guess? Are they looking at the runway and they're looking at the return of investment now? Are they comfortable with that? I guess in America it's different because half of the world's healthcare spend is in America. But when you're a European business, it's a bit trickier and the reimbursement streams are a bit more different. So are the European centered companies, when you're chatting to VCs and investment companies, are they more comfortable with seeing a return of investment now in a medtech company?
But I think, yeah, and definitely what's reassuring to them is that we don't need to wait for reimbursement to get our business model to fly. And I think that's what's making our companies and Gleamer specifically attractive from a VC perspective. That, yeah, we know European market is fragmented. There are some entry barriers, but if we can easily justify ROI, then pretty much any healthcare institution can pay for our solution. And we know that on the clinical side, we have demonstrated the clinical benefits, and I mean that's done already.
Oh, that's awesome. It's great news to hear, because there was a flow of investment money into R&D, and it's just hopefully we can all back it up so we can keep
They're all
more.
Payback, yes.
Yeah. So there are a couple of companies that we speak to, they're like, the investors want some money back. But
it is true that in medtech anyway, it's going to take longer, because even, and we see it, I mean, even if of course, we're not relying on reimbursement, and thank God. We still have fairly long sales cycles, but just because we're selling to hospitals, and in Europe mostly to public hospitals, and these are complex sales in the sense that you need to speak with multiple stakeholders inside the institutions, that you need to go through various kinds of processes, and yeah, I mean, and budgets are usually a yearly cycle. So if you're not aligned to that, it takes a little bit of time. So it's true that and of course you have the regulatory clearances that makes that your entry in different markets, later than in non-medtech companies. So, but I mean, as long as they have that culture of medtech, they understand that, and they see that actually in the AI space, we have a customer acquisition cost that is much lower than what I used to live, with GE and selling medical equipment like CT or MRs, which cost actually a lot to the company just in terms of cash burn in sales, much more than what we see here with the models that we've built on the commercial side.
Oh, I see. So you've got like a much more streamlined process in terms of, awesome, cool. The future's definitely bright for Gleamer. As you said, and definitely with you helping steer the company in that direction, I'm sure you guys will be successful. What are the next sort of 12, 18 months looking like in terms of key milestones that you're looking to hit and shout about that we can all look out for?
Well, I mean, I mentioned that we already released a new product earlier this year. We have 2 other ones to announce fairly shortly. So we are, really speeding up our factory in building new AI solutions and bringing them to market. So I think that's exciting, because it took us it took us a little bit more than 2 years to put BoneView in the market, and we do see now that we have industrialized our processes, so we are able to expand our catalog fast, and that's what we'll be looking at, is to be able to work on multiple clinical indications and subspecialties at once with this squad organization, and to scale our catalog to answer more and more clinical questions. So I think that's definitely exciting, and we're on the commercial side expanding very, very quickly. both on a direct sales perspective. So we're staffing people in Western Europe. We've just started staffing people in the US, obviously. And we're expanding fairly fast our indirect channels as well, because of course we cannot, put feet on the ground everywhere. Yeah. But it also means that from a partnership management perspective, our teams are growing because we need to deal with new types of problematics and cultures when selling into New Zealand and Australia and South America, and really going across borders.
No, exciting. We'll definitely look out for the next 2 products coming forward. But thank you very much for joining me on the podcast, Albane. It's been awesome to have you on and learn about your story and Gleamer and the differences between startup and big corporations. And hopefully this inspired some people who are thinking about making the jump to make the jump, but also sort of inspired people to grab the opportunity if you are in a startup at the moment as well, with both hands, and really go with it. I know I referenced the episode with Idence in this episode, so that's on series 1. So you'll be able to find that on the normal podcast route or on the Cypro website. But for now, Albane, thank you very much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks a lot. Nice talking to you.